The sun was sinking low, painting the garage in shades of orange and gold. The air smelled of oil, grease, and metal, a scent the mechanic had grown to love over the years. He wiped his hands on a worn cloth, leaving dark streaks across his skin, and glanced at the clock. Another long day was nearing its end, but he didn't mind. Fixing motorcycles was not just a job for him, it was a passion. Each engine held a story, each scratch told of a journey, and each repaired bike carried a sense of accomplishment that no paycheck alone could bring. The garage was small but organized, with shelves stacked high with tools, spare parts, and old manuals. Posters of classic bikes covered the walls, some torn at the edges, but each one spoke of a dream he had chased since he was a boy. He liked the quiet moments when the sun streamed through the dusty windows, catching the silver of the tools and the smooth lines of the motorcycles resting on their stands. It was in these moments he felt alive, connected to the rhythm of life through the hum of engines and the smell of rubber and gasoline. He was just finishing up a routine check on an old cruiser when the rumble of a powerful engine cut through the calm. He looked up, squinting against the fading sunlight, and saw a large motorcycle pulling up outside. It wasn't the usual type he saw in this part of town. This bike was something else, big, shiny, and intimidating. The chrome gleamed even under. The fading light and the engine had a deep growl that seemed to shake the very ground. Behind the handlebars sat a man dressed in black leather, his jacket heavy with patches and insignias. The air around him seemed charged, commanding attention without a word. The mechanic's heart skipped a beat. He had seen bikers before, but there was something different about this one, the way he carried himself. The sheer confidence in every movement, it was clear he was not just any rider. The biker swung his leg over and stepped down, his boots heavy on the pavement. He walked toward the garage with a steady pace, and the mechanic couldn't help but notice the subtle weight in his eyes, a mixture of weariness and authority. The biker stopped just inside the garage, surveying the space with a critical eye. The mechanic straightened up, wiping his hands again, feeling a mix of nervousness and excitement. He had worked on all kinds of bikes, but something about this moment made his stomach twist. The biker's gaze landed on him, sharp and direct, and he spoke with a voice that was calm yet carried a warning. He said his bike had been acting up and needed immediate attention. He handed over the keys, the metal cold in the mechanic's palm, and left no doubt in his mind that the work had to be perfect. The mechanic nodded, swallowing hard. He had always believed in his skills, in his ability to understand machines in a way few could. But this was different. This bike wasn't just a machine. It was a statement, a symbol of a world he had never been part of. He took a deep breath, steadying himself, and led the bike into the center of the garage. The tires made a soft hiss as they rolled over the concrete, and the growl of the engine echoed off the walls. He ran his hands over the body, feeling the smooth metal, the weight of the frame, the intricate details of the engine. This was no ordinary repair job. Every bolt, every wire, every part mattered. He set to work, checking the engine first. He listened carefully to the hum, the irregular rhythm that had brought the biker here. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but to his trained ears, it spoke volumes. The bike needed more than a simple fix. It required patience, skill, and respect for the machine. As he worked, he thought about the countless hours he had spent learning, practicing, and perfecting his craft. Each mistake he had made in the past, each late night spent hunched over a stubborn engine, had prepared him for this moment. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he tightened screws and adjusted parts, making sure every connection was perfect. The biker watched quietly, leaning against the wall, arms crossed, his eyes following every move. There was no judgment, only observation, and that made the mechanic even more determined. He spoke softly to himself, naming each tool, each part, as if acknowledging the importance of every detail. It was a ritual, a way to focus his mind and steady his hands. Hours passed in a blur. The sun disappeared completely, leaving the garage, in shadow, illuminated only by the dim overhead lights. The mechanic worked tirelessly, methodically, driven by the need to prove himself. He checked and double-checked, listening to the engine, adjusting the timing, inspecting the fuel lines, ensuring that nothing was left to chance. The quiet of The garage was punctuated only by the occasional click of a wrench, the hiss of air, and the soft rumble of the motorcycle as he tested different components. As he worked, he couldn't help but wonder about the man who owned the bike. Who was he? What had brought him here? There was something human behind the leather jacket, something beyond the intimidating presence. The mechanic imagined a life full of stories of adventures on open roads, of battles fought and challenges overcome. He felt a strange connection to this stranger, a sense that they were both part of something bigger than themselves, linked by a shared understanding of machines and the dedication it took to master them. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the mechanic finished the repair. He stepped back, wiping his hands on the cloth once more, feeling a mixture of exhaustion and pride. The bike looked as perfect as it had when it first rolled into the garage, and he knew that every part was working as it should. He took a deep breath and called the biker over, his voice steady despite the flutter in his chest. The biker approached, his eyes scanning the bike, and then he started the engine. The growl was deeper, smoother, as if the bike itself was expressing satisfaction. The mechanic felt a surge of relief and pride. The biker rode around the block, the sound of the engine echoing through the empty streets. The mechanic watched, holding his breath, hoping everything was as it should be. When the biker returned, he dismounted slowly, a smile breaking across his face. He nodded at the mechanic, a silent acknowledgement of skill and effort. It was a small gesture, but it carried immense weight. In that moment, the mechanic felt something shift inside him. He had not just fixed a machine, he had earned respect, and for the first time in a long time, he felt the possibility of something greater. The biker spoke, his voice lighter now, carrying a hint of amusement. He mentioned that he knew others who could use someone with the mechanic's skills, hinting at opportunities the mechanic had never imagined. The garage, once just a small, quiet space in a corner of town, suddenly felt like the starting point of a new journey. The mechanic felt excitement, curiosity, and a flicker of hope. He had no idea where this path would lead, but for the first time, he believed in the chance for change. As the night settled in and the biker rode off into the darkness, the mechanic leaned against the workbench, hands still stained with oil, heart racing with possibility. He looked around the garage at the tools, the bikes, the posters on the walls, and he realized that this was more than a place of work. It was a place where dreams could take shape, where skill and passion could open doors that had once seemed locked forever. And in that moment, he knew that his life was about to transform in ways he could never have imagined, all because of a single motorcycle and the trust of a man who, until now, had seemed untouchable. The morning air was crisp, and the garage smelled of fresh oil and metal. The mechanic arrived early, as he always did, unlocking the doors and stepping into the familiar space. The sunlight streamed through the windows, catching the chrome on the motorcycles and casting long shadows across the concrete floor. Despite the early hour, he felt an unusual sense of energy, a quiet excitement lingering from the previous day. The encounter with the Hell's Angel had left a mark on him. It wasn't just the thrill of repairing such a powerful machine. It was the recognition, the nod of approval that made him feel seen in a way he rarely experienced. He went straight to work on another project, a classic bike that had been waiting for weeks. He enjoyed these moments of focus, the hum of the engine and the rhythmic movements of his hands bringing a sense of calm. Yet his mind kept drifting back to the biker. He remembered the way the man had watched him, the weight of his gaze, and the subtle smile when the bike purred like it was meant to. It made the mechanic wonder what lay behind those eyes, what stories they held, what life he led beyond the roar of his motorcycle. Around mid-morning, the garage door rattled, and the mechanic looked up to see the Hell's Angel standing there again. He leaned casually against the door frame, a shadow of his large frame outlined by the sunlight. He had returned not because of a problem with his bike, but because he had something in mind. The mechanic felt a mixture of surprise and curiosity. He wasn't sure why the biker had come back, but there was an unspoken understanding between them now, built on the trust earned the day before. The biker spoke, his voice steady and calm, explaining that he was impressed with the repair and that some of his friends could use someone with the mechanic's skills. He mentioned a gathering in the next town, a place where bikers from different regions came together. The mechanic listened carefully, trying to hide the nervousness that bubbled inside. The idea of meeting others in this world was both intimidating and thrilling. He had spent years working in his quiet garage, and suddenly, a door to a wider world had opened. After a brief pause, the mechanic nodded. He wasn't sure what he was stepping into, but there was a pull he couldn't ignore. The biker smiled, sensing his hesitation, and said there was no pressure. It was simply an opportunity, a chance to see beyond the familiar streets he knew. He handed him a card with a location and a time, then mounted his bike and left, the engine's growl fading into the distance. The garage felt quiet once again, but the atmosphere had shifted. The mechanic's mind raced with possibilities, thinking about the bikes he could work on, the people he might meet, and the experiences he had never dared to imagine. For the next few days, the mechanic prepared both mentally and practically. He spent hours organizing the garage, tuning engines and testing parts, ensuring everything was in order. He wanted to be ready for anything that might come his way. At the same time, he researched the gathering, learning about the community he was about to enter. He discovered stories of bikers helping each other, traveling together and forming bonds that transcended their differences. The mechanic realized that this world was more than appearances and rough exteriors. It was built on respect, skill, and loyalty. When the day of the gathering arrived, he packed his tools and drove to the meeting place, his hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. The road stretched ahead, lined with trees and small houses, and the sound of his own bike echoed in his ears. Each mile brought a mixture of anticipation and anxiety. He wondered what the other bikers would think of him, a small-town mechanic stepping into their world. He thought about the Hell's Angel who had first believed in his skill, and that belief gave him courage. Arriving at the gathering, he saw rows of motorcycles parked in neat lines, each one unique, gleaming under the afternoon sun. Bikers were scattered around, talking, laughing, and examining each other's bikes. The mechanic felt a surge of excitement as he walked among them, noticing the details, the custom paint jobs, the modifications, and the care each person had put into their machine. He recognized the signs of pride and dedication in their work. The same pride he felt in his own garage. The Hell's Angel approached, introducing him to several bikers, each one nodding respectfully at the mechanic. There was no pretension, no judgment, just an acknowledgement of skill and effort. Some asked about his work, showing genuine interest in his techniques and the challenges he faced. The mechanic shared stories, explaining how he had started fixing bikes as a teenager, the long nights, the mistakes, and the learning. The bikers listened intently, asking questions, offering tips, and sharing their own experiences. The mechanic realized that despite their tough appearances, there was a deep appreciation for craft, dedication, and honesty. Throughout the afternoon, the mechanic helped a few bikers with minor repairs, adjusting engines, tightening bolts, and offering advice. Each task reinforced his confidence, showing him that he belonged in this space. He noticed the smiles, the nods of approval, and the occasional playful teasing that hinted at camaraderie. For the first time, he felt part of a community that valued what he could do, not where he came from or how he looked. As the sun began to dip lower, casting long shadows across the gathering, the mechanic found himself sitting with the Hell's Angel and a few other bikers, sharing stories and laughter. He listened to tales of road trips, challenges faced on the highway, and the unspoken rules that guided their lives. There was a rhythm to the conversation, a flow of respect and trust that he had never experienced before. He realized that this world, so different from the one he had known, was built on connections, on shared experiences, and on the understanding that skill and loyalty mattered more than appearances. By the time the gathering came to an end, the mechanic had forged new friendships, learned new techniques, and gained insights into a world he had only glimpsed before. The Hell's Angel gave him a firm handshake, a nod of approval, and an invitation to join future rides and gatherings. The mechanic felt a sense of belonging, a feeling that his life was shifting in ways he had never imagined. He returned to his garage that evening, exhausted but exhilarated, knowing that this was only the beginning of a journey that could change everything. In the quiet of his garage, he reflected on the day. The experiences, the conversations, and the trust he had earned weighed heavily on him, but in a good way. He realized that skill and passion could open doors, that courage could take him to places he had never dreamed of, and that life often rewarded those who dared to step beyond their comfort zone. As he cleaned his tools and prepared for another day, the mechanic felt a deep sense of hope. His world was expanding, his future was uncertain but full of promise, and he knew that the encounter with a single motorcycle and a man who believed in his abilities had set him on a path toward something extraordinary. The mechanic woke early the next morning, his mind buzzing with thoughts of the biker gathering. He had never experienced anything like it before. It was more than motorcycles and engines. It was the sense of belonging, the camaraderie, the unspoken respect that connected everyone there. He had spent years in his small garage feeling unnoticed, his talents unrecognized. But now he had a glimpse of a world that valued his skills and appreciated his hard work. That feeling was powerful, almost intoxicating, and it filled him with both excitement and anxiety for what lay ahead. As he prepared for the day, he noticed a quiet confidence settling over him. There was a sense of purpose in the way he moved through his routine, carefully selecting tools, checking engines, and planning his tasks. He thought about the Hell's Angel who had first brought the bike to him, the man who had seen potential where others might have overlooked it. That recognition had sparked something inside the mechanic, a belief that he could do more, be more. It was as if the world had shifted slightly and new paths were opening. By late morning, the Hell's Angel returned, riding smoothly into the garage with the familiar rumble of his powerful engine. This time he was accompanied by another biker, younger with a sharp look in his eyes and a sense of energy that contrasted with the calm authority of his companion. The mechanic felt a mixture of anticipation and nervousness. He had already proven himself once, but meeting more of these bikers meant stepping further into unknown territory. The first biker dismounted and greeted the mechanic with a nod, introducing the younger man as someone who could benefit from his help. They discussed plans for some bikes that needed work, and the mechanic listened carefully, noting the details and the expectations. The Hell's Angel's tone was casual but commanding, conveying trust and authority at the same time. The mechanic realized that his skills were now in demand beyond his small garage, and the thought was both exhilarating and intimidating. He started with a detailed inspection of a custom-built bike, the frame sleek and polished, the engine finely tuned but needing adjustments. The younger biker hovered nearby, asking questions, showing curiosity about the mechanic's techniques. He explained how he approached the repairs, the reasoning behind each movement, and the way he listened to the engine for signs of trouble. The younger biker watched intently, occasionally nodding, absorbing not just the instructions but the care and dedication behind them. Hours passed as the mechanic worked through the details. He checked every bolt, every wire, every connection, making sure the bike was not only functional but perfect. He explained his methods as he worked, sharing tips and insights, and the younger biker followed closely, learning quickly. There was a rhythm to their collaboration, a silent understanding that grew as the day went on. The mechanic felt a sense of fulfillment he had never experienced before, realizing that teaching and sharing his craft was as rewarding as repairing the machines themselves. The Hell's Angel occasionally stepped in, offering brief suggestions or asking questions, but mostly observing, giving the mechanic the space to lead. It was clear that the biker trusted his judgment, and that trust fueled his confidence. By the afternoon, the bike was complete, running smoothly, every engine part working as it should. The younger biker looked impressed, a smile spreading across his face as he realized the depth of knowledge and skill the mechanic possessed. The Hell's Angel nodded approvingly, his expression one of satisfaction. He praised the mechanic, not just for fixing the bike, but for the dedication, patience, and skill he had shown. The acknowledgement was quiet but powerful, and the mechanic felt a warmth in his chest, a sense of pride and accomplishment. He had stepped into a world he had only glimpsed before and found that he belonged, that his work mattered, and that his life could take a different direction if he chose to follow it. The bikers invited him to join a ride the following weekend, a trip to a neighboring town where other gatherings and events were held. The mechanic felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. Riding with these people, traveling beyond his familiar streets, was a challenge he had never faced. But the thought of adventure, of learning more and testing himself, outweighed the fear. He agreed, feeling a thrill of anticipation for the journey ahead. Over the next few days, he prepared his own bike, making sure it was ready for the ride. He inspected every part, polished the chrome, and double-checked the engine. The process was meticulous, a reflection of the respect he had for both the machine and the people he would be riding with. He felt a growing connection to this world, a sense that he was becoming part of something bigger than himself. When the day of the ride arrived, the mechanic met the bikers at the agreed location. There were several more bikes than he had expected, each one unique, powerful, and carefully maintained. The riders welcomed him, offering handshakes, nods, and smiles. He felt a sense of belonging, a rare feeling that lifted his spirits and steadied his nerves. As they lined up to ride, the Hells Angel gave him a firm nod, signaling trust and confidence. The mechanic took a deep breath and started his bike, the familiar rumble filling the air and syncing with the rhythm of his heart. The ride was exhilarating. The wind whipped past, the road stretched ahead, and the sound of engines created a powerful symphony. The mechanic felt alive, free in a way he had never experienced. Conversations were minimal, mostly nods and gestures, but the shared experience created a silent bond. Each mile built trust, each turn reinforced camaraderie, and each stop along the way offered a chance to learn more about the riders and their stories. By the time they reached the neighboring town, the mechanic felt transformed. The experience had been more than a ride. It was a lesson in trust, respect, and connection. He had seen how the bikers relied on each other, how skill and loyalty created bonds stronger than he had imagined. He realized that his life was expanding, that the world he had once viewed as distant and intimidating was now accessible, and that he had the ability to step fully into it. As the day ended and they returned to their meeting point, the mechanic reflected on the journey. The Hells Angel praised him once again, not just for riding well, but for the way he had integrated himself into the group, for the respect he had shown both to the machines and to the people. The mechanic felt a deep sense of gratitude and pride. He had taken a step into a new world, earned recognition, and begun to build a future that he had only dreamed of before. Back in his garage that evening, he looked around at the tools, the bikes, and the space that had been his world for so long. Now it felt like the beginning of something bigger. He understood that life was offering him opportunities, that courage and skill could open doors, and that trust and respect were as valuable as any paycheck. As he cleaned his tools and prepared for the next day, he felt a quiet determination. The ride had changed him, the bikers had inspired him, and he knew that his journey was only just beginning, full of challenges, growth, and possibilities he had never imagined. The mechanic returned to his garage the morning after the ride, a sense of excitement still buzzing through him. His workspace felt different now, almost alive with possibilities. The smell of oil and grease seemed richer, more vibrant. He looked at the rows of motorcycles resting quietly on their stands, realizing that each one held a story waiting to be told, a challenge waiting to be faced. The world he had once seen as limited was suddenly expansive, full of new roads, new people, and new experiences. He started the day by organizing his tools and parts, preparing for the bikers who might come by in the following days. Word had begun to spread about his skills, and he anticipated visits from riders who had heard about the impressive work he did. As he worked, he thought about the Hells Angel and the younger biker, who had been his companion during the last ride. Their trust and respect had opened doors he had never imagined, and he was determined to make the most of this opportunity. Within hours, the garage began to fill. Bikers arrived, some with minor repairs, others seeking advice on customizing their machines. The mechanic greeted each one warmly, listening carefully to their needs, examining their bikes, and offering suggestions. He felt a sense of purpose with every interaction. These were people who valued his work, who respected his knowledge and dedication, and that recognition gave him confidence he had never experienced before. He worked tirelessly, adjusting engines, tuning carburetors, and fine-tuning every detail. The bikers watched, sometimes asking questions, other times simply observing in admiration. The mechanic explained his process patiently, showing not just how to fix the machines but why each step mattered. He emphasized listening to the engine, feeling its rhythm, understanding its quirks. The riders were captivated, absorbing both the technical details and the care he put into every task. Throughout the day, he noticed a growing sense of community forming in the garage. Bikers shared stories, laughed together, and helped each other with small tasks. The mechanic realized that this world was built not only on motorcycles, but on trust, respect, and shared experiences. He had never felt such a strong sense of belonging before. For years he had worked alone, and now, suddenly, he was part of something larger, a network of people who valued him for his skill and dedication. The Hells Angel returned later in the afternoon, bringing more riders and several bikes in need of attention. He greeted the mechanic with a nod of approval, a silent acknowledgement of the growth he had seen over the past days. The mechanic felt a surge of pride, knowing that his efforts had not gone unnoticed. The Hells Angel entrusted him with more challenging projects, demonstrating the faith he had in his abilities. The mechanic took each task seriously, applying the same precision, patience, and care that had earned him respect in the first place. As the sun dipped low, the garage was filled with the sounds of engines, conversation, and laughter. The mechanic moved from bike to bike, adjusting parts, offering advice, and sharing stories. He began to realize that his role had evolved. He was no longer just a mechanic fixing machines. He had become a mentor, a guide, and a trusted figure in a community that had welcomed him wholeheartedly. The sense of responsibility was profound, but it was also deeply rewarding. By evening, the garage quieted, and the mechanic stepped back to survey the day's work. Bikes gleamed under the lights, engines hummed smoothly, and the riders expressed their gratitude with sincere words and firm handshakes. The mechanic felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that his dedication had made a tangible difference. The Hells Angel approached, placing a hand on his shoulder and offering a few words of encouragement. It was a gesture that carried weight, a reminder that the path he had chosen was not just about machines, but about relationships, trust, and respect. The mechanic reflected on how far he had come. A simple act of skill, fixing a single motorcycle for a stranger, had transformed his life in ways he had never imagined. He had gained recognition, built relationships, and discovered a sense of purpose that had eluded him for years. The journey had opened doors to new opportunities, from collaborating with experienced riders to learning advanced techniques and discovering innovative ways to customize bikes. Each interaction brought lessons, inspiration, and a growing confidence that he was capable of achieving more than he had ever thought possible. Over the following weeks, the mechanic continued to grow in skill and reputation. Bikers from neighboring towns began visiting, seeking his expertise, sharing stories, and building connections. He learned to balance his time between repairs, mentorship, and exploring new techniques. The garage became a hub of activity, a place where knowledge was exchanged, friendships were forged, and passions were nurtured. The mechanic thrived in this environment, finding joy not only in the work itself but in the sense of community that had blossomed around him. One evening, as he cleaned his tools and reflected on the day, the mechanic realized that his life had fundamentally changed. He was no longer the solitary figure working quietly in a small-town garage. He had become part of a vibrant community, recognized for his talent, trusted for his judgment, and respected for his integrity. The Hells Angel and other bikers had not only introduced him to a new world, but had also helped him discover his own potential. He understood now that life had a way of rewarding courage, skill, and dedication, and that opportunities often came when least expected. The mechanic looked around the garage, at the bikes, the tools, and the spaces that had once been his entire world. Now they represented possibilities, connections, and a future full of promise. He felt a sense of gratitude, humility, and excitement for what lay ahead. His journey had taught him that talent and passion could open doors, that relationships mattered as much as skills, and that life could transform in an instant through trust, respect, and the courage to step into the unknown. As he prepared for the next day, the mechanic knew that this was only the beginning and that his life would continue to grow, evolve, and flourish in ways he had never imagined. Months had passed since the first encounter with the Hells Angel, and the mechanic's life had changed in ways he never could have imagined. His small-town garage had become more than just a place to fix bikes. It had grown into a hub of activity, creativity, and community. Riders from neighboring towns and cities came to seek his expertise, eager to have their motorcycles repaired or customized. The garage buzzed with energy, the hum of engines and chatter of riders creating a lively rhythm that filled the space. The mechanic felt a sense of purpose and belonging that he had never known before. Every morning he arrived early, checking his tools, inspecting incoming bikes, and planning his day. The work was demanding, but he thrived on it. Each engine, each frame, each wheel presented a challenge, and he approached every task with the same care and precision that had earned him respect in the first place. But it wasn't just about the machines anymore. He had developed strong connections with the bikers, sharing stories, experiences, and lessons learned on the road. Those relationships had become as important as the work itself, enriching his life and broadening his understanding of the world. The Hells Angel remained a constant presence in his life, not just as a mentor, but as a friend. They often discussed business ideas, advanced repair techniques, and even trips to biker events across the region. The mechanic learned more each day, picking up skills that went beyond his previous knowledge, from advanced engine tuning to customizing bikes for style and performance. The Hells Angel's guidance was invaluable, helping him navigate not only technical challenges but also the dynamics of working within this close-knit community. The trust between them grew stronger, built on mutual respect and shared experiences. The mechanic also took on a mentorship role himself, teaching younger riders and aspiring mechanics who visited the garage. He shared his knowledge generously, showing them how to listen to engines, understand the subtleties of each machine, and approach their work with care and patience. He explained that being a good mechanic was not just about technical skill. It was about passion, dedication, and respect for the craft. Watching others learn and succeed brought him immense satisfaction, and he realized that he had found a purpose greater than personal achievement. Business began to flourish in ways the mechanic had never anticipated. Customization requests, repairs, and maintenance jobs poured in, and his reputation spread far beyond the small town where he had started. People trusted his skill, admired his dedication, and valued his advice. The garage became a destination, a place where bikers knew they could find quality work and a welcoming community. The mechanic felt proud of what he had built, understanding that success came not just from talent but from hard work, integrity, and the relationships he had nurtured. One day, a rider arrived with a particularly challenging bike, an old model that had been neglected for years. Many mechanics had refused to touch it, but the mechanic saw it as an opportunity to apply everything he had learned. He examined the bike thoroughly, identifying the issues and planning a careful repair strategy. Over several days, he worked tirelessly, replacing worn parts, adjusting the engine, and restoring the bike to its former glory. When the rider returned, his expression was one of amazement and gratitude. The mechanic felt the same pride and satisfaction he had felt the first time he earned recognition from the Hells Angel. This was more than work. It was transformation, not only of the machine but of the people who entrusted him with it. The mechanic also began attending regional biker events, traveling with the Hells Angel and other trusted friends. These trips were full of learning, laughter, and adventure. He saw the diversity within the biking community, met people from different walks of life, and experienced the thrill of long rides across open roads. Each journey strengthened his skills, expanded his horizons, and reinforced the sense of community that had become central to his life. He understood that the world was bigger than his small town, and that by embracing opportunity and trust, he could grow in ways he had never imagined. Despite the growth, the mechanic remained grounded. He never forgot the days when his skills went unnoticed, when he worked tirelessly in a quiet garage with little recognition. Those experiences had shaped him, taught him patience, and instilled a deep appreciation for every opportunity that came his way. He approached each day with humility, gratitude, and determination, knowing that every interaction, every repair, and every shared story was part of the journey that had transformed his life. As the months turned into years, the mechanic's life became a testament to perseverance, skill, and courage. He had transformed a simple passion into a thriving career, built a network of meaningful relationships, and discovered a world full of adventure and opportunity. The Hells Angel remained a guiding presence, a reminder that trust and recognition could open doors that might otherwise remain closed. The garage, once a small space in a quiet town, had become a symbol of possibility, community, and growth. Looking back, the mechanic understood that everything had started with a single moment. The day he had repaired a motorcycle for a stranger, that act of skill and integrity had set off a chain of events that reshaped his life. It had taught him the value of courage, the importance of relationships, and the power of pursuing one's passion with dedication. He had learned that life could change in an instant, that opportunities often appeared when least expected, and that success was built on trust, skill, and hard work. In the quiet moments as he cleaned his tools and prepared for the next day, the mechanic often reflected on his journey. He felt gratitude for the people who had believed in him, for the challenges that had tested him, and for the experiences that had shaped him. He knew that his life would continue to evolve, that there would always be new challenges, new machines to repair, and new friendships to cultivate. But he also knew that he had the skills, the courage, and the support to meet whatever lay ahead. The mechanic's story became an inspiration for others in the town and beyond. Young riders and aspiring mechanics saw in him a model of what could be achieved with passion, dedication, and integrity. He was proof that even in a world full of challenges, recognition and opportunity could come to those who worked hard and stayed true to their craft. He continued to mentor, to repair, and to innovate, shaping both machines and lives with the same care and skill that had earned him the respect of the Hells Angel months before. And so, the mechanic's life had transformed completely. What began as a simple act of fixing a motorcycle had grown into a life of purpose, community, and fulfillment. He had discovered a world he had never known, built relationships that mattered, and created a career that gave him both pride and joy. Through skill, courage, and the trust of those who believed in him, he had found not only success but a sense of belonging, a life full of opportunity, and a future that was truly his own.